364 days. That's how much time you have to make a difference. This time next year, COVID willing, we'll convene in person to assess our work and determine a course of action moving forward. Why? Why are we here? Benita and I asked you here because every one of you needs to be involved in education right now. Correction, all of us need to be involved in education. I want to thank our hosts, Venture Cafe Miami and Venture Cafe Philadelphia. They're simul streaming this and we're Facebook Live as well. In the chat, I want your airport code. I'm PHL. What are you? PHL, MIA. Philly is definitely Boston. I love it. Izzy, WAS. San Diego's in the house. Beautiful. So literally coast to coast. Carlos, 305 is not an airport code. But I got you.
There's always one, right? Like I had to do it.
And we welcome it. We welcome it. So September Edupreneur Roundtable. I see the Edupreneur Roundtable as an opportunity to address the needs, the demands, and solutions that pre-K through 12 education is begging for. This first session is an idea generating session. We're going to introduce you to an educator, two edupreneurs who are going to pitch, and a community resource. Today's roundtable topic is this country what the founders envisioned? Edupreneurs are innovators. If you have a product, if you have a service, if this service or product could improve the quality of education and subsequently the quality of lives of students, parents, educators, and administrators, then there is a space in this market for you. I'm Neferteri, founder of Teachers and a Benefit LLC. And this is my problem-solving partner, Benita Gordon, founder of the Education Concierge. Benita?
Hi, I have not been able to unmute myself all day. So my name is Benita Gordon. I am the Education Concierge, also known as Benita G. What we do is we do all things related to education. That's it. Parents, other educators, educational institutions, community stakeholders, they contact us with their problems, with their concerns, and we help them and we connect and coordinate. But I want to introduce you to someone that I was just introduced to, but you know, a good educator. We're like the CIA, the FBI, NCIS all wrapped up into one. And as soon as his name popped up and then his picture popped up, I was like, well, I don't know him. Let's go to LinkedIn. Let's go to Facebook. Let's go to Twitter. And of course, teachers of Instagram, we rule the world. Let's go there. And so and I want to say Robertson, because all of my cousins are Roberts. Mr. Robertson, can you introduce yourself and tell us how you are an edupreneur?
Yep, for sure. So my name is Stephen Robertson, founder of Teach Lead Launch. I am currently and still an educator in several different environments, teaching middle schoolers, 5th and 6th grade, teaching 8th graders, and also teaching out SEL along with social studies and English. The entrepreneurial side is what I'm doing with Teach Lead Launch, which we'll get into in a moment. Should I take it away from here? I can just, okay, cool. Yep. I didn't want to go like, I can get the run in my mouth a little bit, right? And it can go on a tangent. But I wanted to make sure that the tone is set for what's about to happen in this space, right? I want to be very clear and intentional about what we're doing, because the seed that's being planted in this space is something that I needed as a young child. So when you talk about preparing yourself to influence teens and young people, you're creating the opportunity to build equity within a system that needs it so badly today, okay? And so I'm asking more than what you intended to get out of this space, be aware of what you're adding to the space that you're participating in, okay? Because I think about me as a child. I went to a school where maybe 2% of the people who were there represented me. Okay, 2%. And even when we look at society today, 2% of educators are Black men. Okay. So when I think about my pathway towards education and being an educator, it's much different and much unexpected. I was asked once before, why do you believe there aren't any or so many Black men in education today? And originally I spoke about money. Money was my first answer. But when I thought a little bit more deeply about it, I thought about what a young man told me in a summer program that I helped start. And he said, Mr. Robertson, the best chance that I have at being successful is either to be an athlete or a musician. And I couldn't understand why he was telling me that. I couldn't get it. He was smart. He's doing engineering work in music, which means he knows math, right? So he was telling me I can't compete with the other people who were in my classes. They're smarter than me. They're better than me. And really all they had was a little bit more access and someone who believed in them. When we talk about resilience, it's so important, not just the health of the person, the wellness of the person, of the individual or of the business, but it's also the information that they have access to. It's the information and the community that's backing them. So when I spoke to the young man, I had to break down for him that you have the opportunity of a lifetime in the space that you're in to become better than what you think you can be. I believe in you. Okay? And so when I think of myself as an educator, my father saw that I was that young man. My father chose to tell me, okay, in 8th grade, you're gonna go coach the 5th graders. You're gonna go teach them. I don't know how to teach. You're gonna go do it anyway. And we figured it out. We went to championships that year in track. When I went to high school, I went back to my middle school and continued to coach. When I went to college, I went back to my high school and continued to coach. And somewhere along the way, I got thrown into teaching positions. I started a nonprofit called Hub for Humanity, where we would go out and feed people in Philadelphia, almost 400 people every week. 400 people every week. 400 people every week. No background knowledge, no particular experience, just hunger and willingness. But at the end of every session, when we made our peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and took them down to Benjamin Franklin Parkway, we had a session where we talked about character, about our wellness, and I told stories. These were the little seeds that taught me I was to become a teacher. Somehow I ended up working as a capacity builder and was brought into a school where they brought on the program. And then somehow from that point, I don't know, but I got thrown into a social studies position at a school where the children looked like me and needed somebody to advocate for them. And when I landed in that space, I recognized that this is where I was called to be. You all as well recognize that you are where you are called to be. Preparing to do the work in young people that is necessary. You are getting ready to build up their wellness, their access to information, and provide them with a community that will allow young people to also become edupreneurs. Become invested in a space that needs all of us to work together in order to build resiliency. So I'll leave you with this. Solving a problem is the difference between how much you make and how much impact you can have. I say this like this. I want you to think about the person who's solving the problem of mopping a floor and cooking a fry. I won't say where they work, but I want you to think about it. The problem that they solve by making sure your fries are hot and ready and prepared with salt or not, and that the floor is clean, is worth $16 to $20 depending on where you are. You've solved that problem and they've paid you for it. You're a problem solver. You're bringing a solution to the table. I can do this for you. And then I want you to think about the person who's solving the problem of plastic surgery. The background knowledge that they had to acquire in order to be the solution in that space. The difficulty that it takes to bring that problem to a solution. You all are in this space because you have identified a problem that is very valuable to those that it impacts. So you stand at the precipice, at the crossroads of not only solving a high value problem, but also leaving our society with major impact. And so I charge you to cherish this space. As you get challenged, recognize that you need to take that information and challenge your young people to become resilient in their own world as they adventure to solve problems.
So I am going to jump in because I want to take what you said and connect it and then roll it all together, because that's what I do. A lot of us in this room, in here on Facebook Live, Venture Cafe Philly and Venture Cafe Miami started volunteering. You even said that. Many of us know, whether it was at your church, your mosque, your synagogue, Girl Scout, Boy Scout, Cub Scout, all the scouts, even a lot of us who were dancers or track or athletic, when we returned home for that summer, we would help out. We would go back. We would train them again. So a lot of us started with that volunteering part. And now it has transitioned into a business in what we love to do. How do we continue to ourselves do that, but also the next generation, the children that we are educating, to remind them that volunteering is great. You don't have to get paid for everything. But then also give them a business sense. Well, yes, some of the stuff you're doing, people do need to pay you for. So there's a clear balance. How do we get that? And this is open for anyone. How do we continue to teach that balance between volunteering and being an edupreneur, being a businessman and businesswoman? I'm gonna give you some think time.
Hey, Benita, that's a great question. Something that comes to mind for me is monetary compensation is not the only way to get compensated, right? Amplification can be just as valuable. And people who are youngsters who are trying to build their brand now, can be elevated through the right kind of amplification. And so it's a great form of compensation as well. It shouldn't be the only kind, but that's something that comes to mind for me.
Daniel, I have a question in response to that. One, anyone who speaks, please introduce yourself to the roundtable so everyone has situational awareness. Two, the utility, if you're in San Diego or if you're in Boston or here in Philadelphia, PICO doesn't accept goodwill. So the balance that's needed, how do we reconcile that? Because a lot of us culturally are not raised to ask for cash, not raised to ask for money, and especially in education.
So you're asking me, sorry, I'm Daniel Aguirre. I'm an immigrant from Mexico. I think it's tricky, right? Because it's very circumstantial. What are the realities that you're navigating? I think what comes to mind for me is that volunteering is a way to amass lived experience. And a lot of times when you're going after that first job or you're going after a job that you might not on paper be qualified for, that lived experience might qualify you for it. And so it's a willingness to lean into that, into gaining lived experience in addition to, traditional forms of gaining knowledge. And you said something about, sorry, Neferteri, you said something about PICO is not what? I'm sorry?
Your utility company, they want payment for service. So if you want to keep the lights on,
Yeah.
right? That's the way that in some cases we have to look at it. The opportunity right now in the education space is just so wide open for those that can provide solutions to these problems that have always been there under the surface, but now the veil is lifted. So I want to engage Gary. Gary is one of our hosts, Venture Cafe Philadelphia. Gary, there is a lot of talk around social capital. What about altruism? What about altruistic capital? Where's the opportunity in us in this room at this round table coming together for some of the bartering that Daniel is alluding to?
Well, I think we're experiencing some of that right now. Absolutely. We experience it every week during our Thursday gatherings. Hello, everyone. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm Gary. I'm the program manager and experience designer for Venture Cafe Philadelphia. And I mean, this is such an awesome session because it's in collaboration. Today's session is in collaboration with Venture Cafe Miami. So thank you, Luca, for joining us and helping us pull this off. I think to build off of Nefertiri's question, I would actually like to introduce some social entrepreneurs that are joining us this evening. We have two startups, two companies, one from the Philadelphia area and one from Miami. So I'd like to introduce Carlos Vasquez, who's joining us from Miami, representing Miami EdTech. And we also have April Singleton, Izzy Hughes, and is Alvaro here? Yes, Alvaro from Equip. I'm going to hand it over to them. They have some pitches to share with you all. I love a good startup pitch. I always share this, but as an entrepreneur, your pitch is something that you always have to have just ready to go. Whether it's your 60-second pitch, your 5-minute pitch, your pitch deck, whatever it is, if you are in pursuit of opportunities, you got to be ready to capitalize at any moment. So we have an awesome group here ready to capitalize on this opportunity. And I'm hoping to explore the possibilities for collaboration between ecosystems. And I could talk all day, but I'm going to hand it over to Carlos first. Carlos, how are you doing?
Awesome. Doing well. Thanks so much, Gary, for inviting us, inviting me to kind of talk a little bit tonight. It's been a long day, but coming into this, it feels really uplifting, right? You always find that when you hear certain topics that spark you. So coming in here, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is exactly what I needed to kind of pick me up. So I prepared something, I wear many hats in the ed tech space. I have a nonprofit that does professional development for teachers, specifically around computer science and entrepreneurship. I think I have is it possible to allow me to share the screen? I have a couple of slides that I just wanted to go through.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So yeah, I figured I'd share this just to kind of go through it. As I mentioned, my name is Carlos Vasquez here in Miami. Originally from New York City. If you can't tell, I'm from the Bronx. You can't tell by my accent yet. But I've been in Miami going on 10 years. Would take trips down to Philly to, of course, grab a Philly cheesesteak back in the day. So, but I love Philly. Also did a lot of music stuff back in the day. But anyhow, my career has led me into this path of focusing on schools and helping teachers specifically provide computer science and entrepreneurship training to students. And one of the stories that I have in Miami that really inspired me was being at a technology conference, running into this young man here, Donald, and hearing his story about being a high school student, not knowing anyone who works in technology or in the ed tech industry, right? Being pretty disconnected, but luckily got some free tickets to come to this technology conference. Even more lucky, I got to run into him and meet him. And his story really like reminded me of like my story as I was like growing up in the South Bronx, trying to figure out like my path. I didn't know I would end up in like a computer science track or even as an entrepreneur. Because I think when, growing up, when we hustled, it was part of our fabric, right? Like it was just what we did to survive. And as an entrepreneur, now that I do it, right, like I'm still doing it to survive, but there's mouths to feed too. So I can't be so selfish. I got a 4-year-old, we have bills to pay. And so survival, right? Like the definition of what it means to survive evolves. And one of the things that, I think is really important, I think we've talked about it, is the lack of support and funding for entrepreneurs, Black and brown, across the table, but in particular, Black and brown entrepreneurs who feel a calling to give back because of what they've been through. And when you get to a certain point, you feel that you are now, when you, was it Spider-Man quote, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And I take that really internally, and that's kind of like guided my way. In Florida overall, like only 30% of public high schools teach computer science, which is crazy to think that, in this era of technology being such a dominating and, widely growing field, that's what we have. But even less, only 0.15, that is 0.15 of teachers are certified to teach CS, which is really at the heart of the issue. If we don't have teachers who are prepared to train, especially in our under-resourced schools, how are we going to inspire the Donalds to be able to like follow up, pursue a career in education, technology, or in computer science? In 2017, not one teacher in the state of Florida graduated with an education degree certified to teach in computer science. So you think again that we'd be getting better? No, it's not. So I wanted to go through it quickly and just, really believe strongly in this quote, right? Like history makes us. So how did we get here? And I put together a quick run through, but I do want to first acknowledge I am also recently part of the Computer Science Teachers Association. I recently took a role as their professional learning manager. So now what I've been doing, the work here in Florida, is now I have a national kind of impact. So I'm really excited about that. And this presentation, I took a couple of tidbits here just to drop some knowledge around like, how did we get here? How did we get to this crisis? How do we get to the fact that we have so few girls, African Americans, Latino students who study computer science, which really provides kind of like a pathway into entrepreneurship or even a CS career, right? So we have unequal distribution of course offerings. We have lack of formal curricular professional development. That's my focus. So at first I started off doing a lot of programs in schools and realized that if I wanted to make this type of systemic change that I wanted to, it would have to be working with teachers. I love teachers. I still teach at Miami-Dade College. I started off as a teacher, 5th grade in the South Bronx, my hometown, through a New York City Teaching Fellows. So this is what inspires me. So I started, that's one thing that we have. That's our reality right now, that we have a crisis as it relates to Black and brown students in technology, studying technology, working in technology. How did we get there? So you saw the number about like not one teacher graduated prepared to teach CS with a credential, right? So if we look at higher ed and how it began, these are facts, right? This is history. So I tend to root things in like, we can talk opinions and we can talk, subjective, dialogue, but these are things that we need to acknowledge, that as in history of education, we were excluded from access, right? Intentionally, legally, we were not able to access it. So that, when we think about ways that we're growing and trying to become the field getting leveled, there's so much work to do. There's so much catching up to do. This is just higher ed, and how higher ed is still in crisis too, with the fact that we take out ridiculous loans. I remember being in college and every semester I had to like, struggle to find someone sign a loan. My mom, poor mom, who couldn't sign a loan for me. We call every family member, and I think I have like 10 family members who have had to co-sign on a loan, right? That is a problem. That should not be the case to want to study. So that's just higher ed. And then now if you look at computer science, computer science historically was basically created as a follow-up to math, which then led to like that population, specifically, white and Asian men participating in CS. And it's only till recently in the past, 10 years that we realized, wow, we need to teach computer science. But again, we have to play catch up. And how do we play catch up when the same teachers who are Black and brown teaching our Black and brown students were excluded from participating in learning about CS? That's a structural issue. When we talk about systemic issues, that is a systemic issue. So what have I done, and what am I trying to do about it? Well, Miami EdTech, we launched as a way to provide professional development to teachers. I see every teacher potentially serving 70 to 80 students at their school. So now you're talking about exponential impact. On top of that, we show teachers through a partnership with Teach for America how to create scalable solutions, how to create technology-based solutions. Yes, apps that can help teachers in the classroom. For those of us who are here in Miami, you saw what just happened recently with a enterprise level software not being able to be used for, they just basically voted it down last night. So it's absurd that we have to go through that, and our families and students rely on that. A whole other topic, but that's another problem. How do we get more people who look like us creating solutions? We need to empower, especially educators who get, pigeonholed because they're good at classroom management, because they're good at keeping students organized in the lunchroom, when they need to actually be out there creating the bigger solutions, not solving the small problems that a school principal can't handle. So anyhow, that's what we do, and continuing to do it. And again, this conversation obviously has me fired up. I'm happy to be here. And I will end and stop my share there, but that's what we continue to do here in Miami and now across the country.
Well, definitely here in Philly, we want to embrace, we want to collaborate. And just for situational awareness, UPenn right down the street with Rear Admiral Grace Hopper, like a woman that was tip of the spear leading in innovation in computer science. And a lot of that work is still being done. Today is really about identifying opportunities, thinking about how we can approach them and overcome them together collectively, right? So before we go on to the next pitch, I want to introduce the roundtable. Milena, will you unmute yourself? There's a young lady who doesn't, I don't want to say that she doesn't want to participate in Zoom U, but she's on a gap year. But there's some amazing work that she's doing in the greater Philadelphia area, mentoring young girls in computer science. Milena, you're muted. You have to unmute. And she's actually hailing from Greece right now. So if her bandwidth is kind of off, excuse her. Would you share your organization? I definitely want Carlos to know what you're doing here in Philly.
Hi, thank you for introducing me, and it's so great to be here. So as Ms. Strickland said, my name is Melina Danilidis. I just graduated high school in June, and I'm taking a gap year before starting my major in computer science at the University of Pennsylvania. When I was in 7th grade in 2014, I started an after-school club at my middle school called GLIST, Girls Leading Science and Technology, with the aim to encourage girls to get involved in the male-dominated field of computer science by teaching them how to program in Python. And the program has been running since then, so we're 6 years strong. And even after I had graduated middle school, I went back to mentor the members who would continue to join each year. The club, and now kind of turning into an organization, is student-led. So we pride ourselves in being made by girls for girls. The curriculum that we've developed in Python, developed by middle school girls across the years that it's existed. It's in a real programming language like Python, and we teach it to these middle schoolers. We've done various outreach events at the Philadelphia Science Festival, Young Innovators Fair. We've hosted some coding workshops at the Microsoft store, which are all, again, run by our middle school members, so that they have the opportunity to become teachers themselves early on in their stages of actually learning the language itself. So they become leaders very quickly, and I think that gives them confidence in what they're learning in Python, and also in spreading it to other people through the events that we're at. These past 2 summers, some of our bigger accomplishments or achievements, was running a summer camp. So last year it happened in person at the University of Pennsylvania. This year it was virtually. for 2 weeks, August 10th to 21st. And with that, we were able to take the opportunity to reach out to more underrepresented communities of Philadelphia and give them the tools and the accessibility to join the camp. So we reached out, so we ended up having 66 campers this year from 37 different schools in 9 different school districts. And I think about 64% of the schools were from the school district of Philadelphia. And it was for not only middle school students, but also rising 3rd to 8th grade girls, all in Python. So we were really excited with how it went and the positive feedback that we got. And now today we've launched in collaboration with Ms. Strickland, Teachers and the Pollination Project. We're launching a book review of Women of Color in Tech by Suzanne Tedrick. Yep, there it is. So we're super excited.
I find that to be, for me, it's amazing. For those that don't understand the gravity of programming in a programming language versus drop coding on Khan Academy or some other prefabbed environment, the challenge that Carlos brought up of not having educators that are certified are mitigated or at least addressed if you have young people who don't have the fears that adults have for learning a new language, just like if it was a foreign language, and approaching it where the students are peer teaching or near peer teaching. And that opportunity is available virtually via GLIS. So please, Milena, drop your social media information in the chat for anyone that is interested. And this session between Venture Cafe Miami and Venture Cafe Philadelphia will be available on YouTube and for replay at a later date. So the book. Gary, I know we've invited you to come and participate in the conversation. You're chapter 5. So this will actually be a community reading. So anyone that's interested in learning about some of the challenges and a blueprint for success for women of color in tech by Susan Tedrick, you're more than welcome to join us. Gary, I'm going to hand it back over to you because I know Izzy and April are going to share with us their pitch as well.
Thank you, Neferteri. Yes, I'm very excited to introduce you all to Izzy, April, and Alvaro. They are incredible social entrepreneurs leading the charge. They just graduated from a pre-accelerator at the University of Delaware. So congratulations to them. And that means that they've done a lot of practice pitches. So they should be ready to go. April, Izzy, Alvaro, you ready?
We're ready. Thank you for that introduction, Gary. And so I'm Izzy, and I'll let April say hello as well.
Hello, my name is April Singleton.
And so we got started on this project around like the spring of last year, and we did a pre-accelerator this summer. And we just really dove right in and tried to understand some of the problems that high school students experience and some of the gaps in education within K through 12. And part of that was also reflecting on our own experiences because we, haven't graduated high school like all that long ago. So we were able to kind of pull in all of those. And so I have a slide. I can share my screen, or else we can just go into it. But so kind of the problem that we identified is that today's youth are increasingly concerned about the state of our world, but our education system is not addressing the critical conversations of our time. We are reimagining education to equip young people with the academic grounding, effective strategies, and emotional intelligence needed to disrupt the problems of their communities.
So our startup, Equip, provides bold and unique social justice education to young people who want to enact their own change. We address essential topics that are neglected in schools like racism, gender inequality, and climate change through high-quality deep dives into the historical and modern context of the issues. And we also anchor our curriculum in social emotional learning and entrepreneurially creative capacities.
And so through doing this pre-accelerator program, our university has also reached out to us, and we're going to partner with them this spring to develop and deliver a design sprint program with the university students to kind of really analyze and figure out what the issues are in our own community and what we can do to address them. And so we hope to become a self-sustaining nonprofit that can bring this same value to the K through 12 students through design sprints, multi-week courses, and longer intensives. And so thank you all for having us and listening to us. We'd love to answer any questions, and please reach out. We'd love to continue conversations and, meet people. So don't be afraid to reach out.
So Izzy and April, thanks so much. I see you dropped information in the chat where those interested can reach out to you. What I want to ask of the roundtable, that's everyone here, if you want to ask a question, or better yet, instead of asking a question, can you share with Izzy and April a hurdle that they may need to look out for, a challenge in their path going from this accelerator space into a full nonprofit for this work? What's a piece of advice? Unmute and share.
So I'm going to say.
So this is Theo. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Theo.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Neferteri, for inviting me to this this great group. So, having been in the nonprofit world, and my family's been in the nonprofit world for 60-some years, one of the things that you need to look at is folks who like to give money tend to give money to the same old folks who they always give it to because they're comfortable with them, even though they don't deliver. So you'll have to present, and they become conservative with their money, right? Because they're afraid to take a chance on a startup, right? So especially they look at age, they look at gender, they look at race, they look at, oh, who else has funded you? What have you done in the past? So, YMCAs, Red Cross, all the old nonprofits have been there forever, doing the same things forever. You'll need to not get despondent about that, but just understand that. And all you need is one to fund you to take a chance, and then the others will have the courage to do so too.
Great advice.
Yes, thank you so much. And through our discovery, we found that to be so true for a lot of our other friends in the space who are trying to do the same thing or similar things in the nonprofit space. And we are super determined to be as self-sustaining as possible and not have to rely on those sort of funders that are geared towards more older, less bold, less unique organizations. So it is definitely in the forefront of our mind, but I'm so glad you mentioned it because it definitely reinforces that.
So April and Izzy, the question of today, is this the country that our founders envisioned? You said you're not too far removed from high school. What are your thoughts as you take on the bold and big problems that you said that you intend to?
I don't know if the founders would have envisioned anything like what we have as our reality today at all. I'd be very surprised. But as we move forward, we've found that the students really do care about social change, and they care about making their schools more equitable, and they care so much. And we feel that the education system and infrastructure is very top down, and there isn't a lot of opportunities for students to kind of work their way up and communicate the needs or become forces for change in their schools. And so they aren't able to accomplish the goals that they want. And so we're hoping that we can kind of disrupt by coming in and empowering the students and giving them a chance to sort of address the issues that they're familiar with because they're living through them every day.
I love it. I see a lot of head shaking. I think everybody else loves it too. So I want to introduce you to a person who represents an organization that is a resource. Rachel Hammer. She is the Chief Development Officer with the Library Company of Philadelphia. Have either of you all heard of the organization? So you're in for a treat. Rachel, do you mind introducing yourself and sharing the resource that is the Library Company?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And I love what you've said and what you've built. I just want to say that I think it is exactly in the spirit of what the Library Company of Philadelphia was and is. So I'll give you my couple-minute elevator speech, which I'll do my best to keep brief. The Library Company of Philadelphia is this phenomenal social change agency, agent institution that was founded in 1731 by Benjamin Franklin. So we're celebrating our 289th year of existence today. And so we were founded with the sole purpose to put books in the hands of ordinary citizens. Franklin was 25 when he founded this. It was the country's first public library. It is the oldest cultural institution in the country. It is the first museum. And it was founded because Franklin himself didn't have access to books. He wasn't affluent. And in the 18th century, the only people who really had kind of unlimited access to education and books for people who were really white, affluent gentlemen, right? People who, the marginalized communities weren't there. And there's a lot of us who couldn't access that education in that time period. So he founded the Library Company to provide access for education and to provide a learning community. And that learning community was created in a way where we would come together in groups like this and talk about the important issues of today. So you use the word to disrupt, which I love, because in Franklin's kind of essence, he sought to disrupt society, and he credits the Library Company with getting the colonists ready for the rights and privileges of citizenship. Women were members of the Library Company early in its existence. Not at the very first year of founding, but in the very early, in the first 10 years, we have female Library Company members. The African-American community, the free Black community in Philadelphia contributed collections and used the collections as well, the books, to circulate the information they were writing. People like Richard Allen and Absalom Jones. We have their collections, Frederick Douglass, Sarah Mapps Douglass, a lot of the abolitionist community, Octavius Cotto. So they have a voice and a conversation and a place at the table at the Library Company. So it's this phenomenal social change agent. And over time, it grew to be the largest library through the Civil War. And today, with the advent of free public libraries, we are a research library. So we have 1 million pieces in our collection that document early America. And we exist to bring people together to have conversations about history, about the positives, the negatives, what can we learn from the past, and how can it influence the future? How can we be a better today and a better tomorrow because we understand where we came from, understanding the full history of what happened here in America and how we can make change for better. And that's the essence of the Library Company, is to make a better tomorrow based on education and an educated community. And so it's a really cool institution. We have a niche in women's history, African American history. We have the largest African Americana collection in the country, second to the Library of Congress. So we have a really full, rich history and an opportunity to talk about different strains of history. And we welcome these kinds of partnerships where we can educate the community and help the community to educate us. So kind of as a foundational learning community. This is what we're all about. And so I really wanted to thank Neferteri and this whole group for welcoming us and me in. I'm really honored to be part of it and privileged to contribute and support whatever endeavors we can. Franklin was a superior fundraiser, so I'll tell you, I'm happy if you guys are interested in raising money and looking at how you can raise money and being sustainable, which is key. I've been raising money in the Philadelphia community for more than, I dare say, 20 years. And I come from a social work background, so I do it to make a difference so I can leave a better world, tomorrow than it is today. That's kind of my jive. And so I'm happy to help you guys. I'll text you, or I'll put my email address in the chat and reach out to me. I love talking with people, and I love to share what lessons I've learned. And I know you guys can teach me a lot too.
Yes, thank you so much. That was all so exciting. Yes.
I have a quick question. When I was listening to Rachel, I was thinking back. Today I read a friend's Facebook page, and the Facebook page basically said that they went to go register their child at school in Virginia. I'm from Virginia, so I already knew. I was like, oh, I don't know how that's gonna work. And they were asking about the curriculum, which every parent should do. And they were asking about the curriculum, asking about how was history taught, what was involved in the history lesson, like what angles and different things. And the response the parents received was, we don't teach Black Lives Matter history. And I was sitting there like, I read the post twice because I was like, I'm not sure, did I miss something? What was happening? So I think that Rachel's program, Izzy, April, and all of the edupreneurs in here, and even Mr. Robertson spoke upon it. Like, we are problem solvers.
Absolutely. And Benita, if they don't teach Black Lives Matter history, then they don't teach American history. That is the problem. And so, because African American history is American history, and it has to be taught hand in hand, and it has to be honest, hard truth. You know, right. My 13-year-old came home from school 5 years ago, and he says to me, Mom, I don't understand. If George Washington was such a great man, why did he own slaves? And I'm not saying he didn't do great things by fighting in the Revolution and doing what he did, but that history has to be taught side by side, and we have to be honest and real with ourselves.
Definitely. And that was the part, thank you, that was where I was going, because I was like, no, you're good, because I'm from Virginia, and the part of Virginia I grew up in, we were taught all of the history of Virginia, the good, the bad, the ugly, the amazing, all of it. And so I think that goes back into where we're in this space now, and several people on here I know from Instagram. I've been following you on Instagram. I know you from Twitter. And I know that you are in the gaps where we're seeing on different levels. So we're running from nonprofit, we're running from science, tech, STEM program, we're running from community activism, we're running from just, you know, all of the gamut. I have social emotional learning, I have some mental health therapists in here. And so we're all trying to navigate in this round table exactly where we need to fit to fill in the gap. But I want to throw the question out it goes back to what Neferteri was asking. And I'm just going to make it a little simpler. Are we even ready? Like, are we ready as a society to really change the systematic education that's been in place that, like I tell my students, I tell my team all the time, how we taught prior to March 2020, we can't teach like that anymore. COVID came and swept all of that away. And so where do we go from here is my question. And how do we get there? Where do we even start with parents, with edupreneurs at the round table? Where do we start?
Can I chime in for just a second? My name is Patty Savage, and I work in education publishing. So I just wanted to offer some suggestions for parents. So I'm in California. In California, the state has an adoption process. This may not be the case in Virginia, but either your school district or states have a process for adopting textbooks. And I would highly recommend that if you're not involved as a community stakeholder in the way that your local school district adopts educational resources, please get involved. I know here in California, parents can be on committees, students can be on committees. Every state is probably different and has their own rules, but I think if you just get involved and get on those committees that are making those choices, whether you're an educator or not, you're a stakeholder in the community, then you can be that voice on the committee that says, wait a minute, you know, we're not going to call slaves workers. Like, we're going to acknowledge that they were slaves and they were not paid for their labor. I mean, I know that was a big issue in Texas with the McGraw-Hill textbook, where they didn't name the slaves as slaves. So I think that kind of stuff happens a lot, and we can all be involved in changing that. You don't have to be a teacher. You don't have to be an educator. You can just be a community stakeholder. You don't even have to be a parent of a student in school where your local district is. You just have to be a stakeholder in the community that wants to speak up.
Amazing, Patty. And Rachel put in the chat, this is where volunteerism comes into play. Can I ask you offline for just a short list of how we should begin to approach that process, so we know the right questions to ask? And that leads me to dropping in the chat for everyone a survey. I want to make sure we do, I at least get it out to you before we wrap. We have about 7 minutes. So take that link and ensure you fill out the survey. The roundtable is a roundtable for a reason. We want this to be level. We want this to be community. And an important aspect of community is giving more than you take, to ensure that there's always a reservoir of resources that are available. So in the chat, if you don't mind, what do you have to offer this group? You may not know who exactly it's for, but what do you have to offer?
So I was gonna add, if it's okay.
Add.
In this space, it was asked, like, what can we do, right? And so with Teach Lead Launch, one of the special things about this is how we coach those who teach others to build culturally responsive lessons, right? And so in all that we're teaching, we want to make sure that that is included, because that leads us to the space that we're talking about. If the culture is of entrepreneurship, we want to ensure that entrepreneurship is seen in each lesson that we teach, whether it's STEM related or otherwise. If the culture is Black and brown, Spanish, of different descents, different areas, different spaces, different places, different people, we teach people how to include that in their lessons, whether it be math, dealing with ratios, or social studies, or STEM. It's important that we ingrain these things so that people are exposed and experiencing it at a younger age, and then influencing what they do at an older age when they encounter someone else.
Thank you. Kimberly, is that a hand?
Yes, I was gonna say, hey, Neferteri, can I chime in a little bit? Everything that everyone says really resonate with me. I love this space that you've all created. My name is Kimberly Milton. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I am from a consulting firm, Restore More. We're entrepreneurs ourselves, so I feel very at home in this space. We're babies too, a little like infants. We're 2 years old. And what everyone is saying is true. Finding access to the content and making sure that we have the resources that it looks like for us is key. We are a social emotional learning firm where we really push for social emotional wellness, awareness, self-awareness, as well as now anti-racism, and how to be able to really tackle that. We are also former classroom teachers, so we know that people need the things. So we are working to help bring into the space content to help make that conversation easier to the point that people are making. And so what we've created within ourselves is what we call a anti-racist circle kit. And within that circle kit, it has a guide for teachers, parents, adults to be able to have these hard conversations. Within this circle script, it has things that tackle being an ally, discrimination, police brutality, and of course, anti-racism. But I think what everyone is saying is true. We have to have the curriculum that looks like us, feels like us, is meant for us, includes us, so that we, it can really be a part of the process to begin the healing that is needed. So I can drop a link, if you all would like, of a preview of the Circle Kit so that you can see it as an example of what it looks like, how to flow, and the questions you can begin to ask to be able to have that conversation. Because it's hard sometimes. And sometimes we just need to know where to start. And that's what I'll also say to my other edupreneurs, entrepreneurs here that are starting up in the game is like, just start. Like, take it day by day. And then one day you're going to look up and you're going to realize that you have grown so much and that you have made such a change. So my advice to you all is just start, and day by day, chip away at it.
Kimberly, thank you. And I want to remind everyone, 364 days, and we'll physically get together. We'll assess the work that we've done, and we'll develop courses of action to move forward, because the needs are going to change. If this is a marketplace and you want to be a player, you want to be an entrepreneur, there is going to always be room for you. So in the chat, if you would, what do you need, to include you, Kimberly? What do you need that is going to take you to the next level of success, that's going to enable you to do the next big thing that you intend to? Ashanti, before we wrap up, I want to engage you. Please unmute yourself, because everyone needs to feel your energy.
I'm unmuted, I swear. Izzy and April, I wanted to toss, lost a microphone here. Wanted to toss this out for you. Ashanti Davis, I am a museum professional and current master's student with Johns Hopkins, and am actually doing a program in nonprofit management. And I wanted to throw out to you just the idea that what you're creating, and I love it. Why a nonprofit? And there are so many nonprofits that do so many things, and that's not to say that nonprofits are bad. I'm a current museum professional and work in a museum, which is a nonprofit, slightly disfranchised with the industry at the moment. But what if it could be a nonprofit? Could it be something else? I think this is our opportunity as thinkers, as innovators, and as edupreneurs to really think about how we could think differently about our organizations, about our impact, about how we want to affect our communities. And nonprofits aren't always the way. There's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of things, as Rachel called out. You have to fundraise. That is the big piece of that. And fundraising, we know that we are, because of the number of nonprofits, we are tapping the same pool of funders, and they tend to go to what they're most interested in, though there are some other ones who don't. But think about some of those other models of business, like B Corps, and some of the other ones that just take you out of the what a nonprofit could be, and think about it more broadly as what this business, as what this enterprise, as what this entity is, and the impact that it could really have. So go to your long game, go all the way out and look there, and see what it is at the end. Because if it's not a nonprofit at the end, then it doesn't need to start as a nonprofit right now.
Yeah, that's definitely something that April and April, feel free to hop in whenever. We struggled with that for a long time, and we're still kind of like figuring it out. But in our discovery, we found that within the education ecosystem and space, there's really this trust that educators are willing to give to a nonprofit that they aren't willing to give to a for-profit organization. So if you're looking in to work with kids, we found that from the people that we talked to, they were kind of saying that it would be easier for us to kind of get started and work as a nonprofit and still charge for our.
Kimberly's tossing her hand up, but it's not true. You can still be a for-profit entity. The challenge is that people assume that nonprofits, you don't make money, that you're good. There are so many nonprofits who make tons of money and do very terrible things. But within the education sphere, the educators kind of stay out of it. There are so many for-profit entities who make tons of money and then take that money and funnel it into so many other things to support educational institutions. They're just not accustomed, our education community may just not be accustomed to working with the for-profit community in that way, because that's not how they're being engaged directly. So you could create something else that is phenomenal. You just have to dig a little bit. Go ahead, Kimberly.
And Ashanti, what I was going to say is we're a for-profit. we're a for-profit company. I wanted to make sure I stamped that. We're a for-profit, and we like to call ourselves a for-profit for good. And when we began, we struggled with that idea of that nonprofit for-profit, because it's like, for-profit sounds like you're trying to be greedy. But what we recognize is that the difference for us between nonprofit and for-profit is that for a nonprofit, if we began, the board essentially would own the entity and the content. And my partner and I have been working in the game for so long that our content had been owned by someone else, that we wanted to be the sole owners of our company. So we recognized that we had to, as the gentleman said, build the trust, build the relationships. We started with our core network and we worked our way out. But we said in the beginning, and we always say proudly, that we are a for-profit, but we are a for-profit for good. We are a social, emotional enterprise where we're bringing good, and yes, it's for profit, but we are bringing goodness to the world. So I don't want you to get bogged down in that, Ashanti. I'm sorry. There you go.
No, and Izzy and April, look at B Corps. B Corps are for-profit entities that are for good. So they have those nonprofit things. They have a mission, but they are for-profit. And I believe Patagonia is a B Corp, and they are a massive corporation. And you can go to their, you can dig into their website and go to their more foundational piece and look at the good that they are doing. And it's really all about how you promote yourself. You can say you're a nonprofit, but the American Red Cross is a nonprofit, and they've done some shady stuff.
So Ashanti, on that note,
yeah.
on that note, Izzy and April, thank you again. I will leave you with the B Lab that oversees the B Corps structure is right here in the greater Philadelphia area. The Edupreneur Roundtable is designed to disrupt and reimagine education. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Again, Izzy, April, Carlos, Gary, of course, and all of you all. Venture Cafe Miami, Venture Cafe Philadelphia. We look forward to seeing you in October. We're going to do this again, progress the conversation, and start to develop those courses of action. Benita, do you want the last word before we close?
This is the last word. Practice patience in the pivot, but understand that when you are a problem solver, it is not going to come easy because people are going to give you pushback. Don't let their answer, no, is not the final answer. There's another way to get it done.
Now go out and be great.
Thank you so much, everyone. If you are interested in sticking around, and I think you might be, we have a session starting right now on U.S. immigration law changes under the current administration. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Please, please, please feel free to join us. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Thank you, Venture Cafe Miami. Thank you to all of our entrepreneurs, our edupreneurs, Neferteri, Benita, everyone. Thank you very much. Hope to see you very soon.